think, Marge. All I need is a title.
On December 12th, voters in Alabama will go to the polls to elect a member of the U.S. Senate to fill the seat vacated by former Senator Jeff Sessions, who is now the Attorney General. On the Democrat side, Doug Jones, the former U.S. Attorney for the Northern District of Alabama, was selected. On the GOP side, Luther Strange, the former Attorney General of the state of Alabama and sitting U.S. Senator, went up against Roy Moore, a former circuit court judge and a former Chief Justice of the Alabama Supreme Court. In the August primary, President Donald Trump put his weight behind Luther Strange, but the voters backed the more conservative Roy Moore. Roy Moore is no stranger to controversy, having been known nationwide for his stance on keeping a monument of the Ten Commandments at the state Supreme Court building. He was also a backer of the birther movement, accusing former President Barack Obama of not being eligible for the office because he did not meet the citizenship rules for being a U.S. citizen. Moore is known as a firebrand conservative from a state that had solidly red. After the primary, Moore told the press that he intended to work to move the Trump agenda through the U.S. Senate. On November 9th, the Washington Post reported that at some time during the late 1970s, when Moore was a county assistant DA, he had an inappropriate sexual contact with a young girl aged 14. The campaign denied this, calling it a last-minute desperate attack by the Democrats who know they are losing the race. On November 14th, celebrated attorney Gloria Allred presented a woman who claims that as a young girl she was sexually assaulted by Roy Moore. These are, of course, serious allegations, and if they are true, Roy Moore should step down from the race because at that point his political career will be the least of his problems. However, for the moment, the charges from what is now 5 or 6 women are just that, allegations, and these are more than 35 years old. The reason why we have statutes of limitations in legal cases is because the older an accusation is, the more faulty it becomes. Also, there is the aspect of the story that the main accuser worked with the DNC during the 2016 election on the Clinton campaign, and the Washington Post is a liberal media outlet that is not above launching an attack story to try to down a GOP candidate. But Roy Moore didn't do himself any favors when he went on the Sean Hannity show and proceeded to give dodgy answers to direct questions on whether he, as a 30-year-old man, attempted to date teenagers.
We have to balance serious allegations here with also the presumption of innocence, don't we? How do you do that?
Well, I think that, with all due respect, you're burying the lead. The lead is that was a smart, tough, deeply revealing interview. What are we talking about here? We're talking about a he said, she said. So the credibility of the parties is the most relevant thing you can think of. I pictured Judge Roy Moore just then sitting in the witness chair and you asking him those questions and hearing his denials, his non-denial denials, his fumpering and not
what specific question though?
When you asked him, did he date these young women or these girls, and he said, I
asked the general question.
No, generally not. No, generally not. So that means that there are exceptions to your general rule. I thought, Sean, you ended Roy Moore's, and you did not intend this. But I'm speaking now as I think a fair arbiter with that telling interview, asking every question that everybody listening had. You ended his candidacy, and I would urge Republicans to postpone the special election.
And Moore has not given any other interviews, despite repeated contacts from people such as Todd Starnes. Most recently, a woman surfaced with a high school yearbook, which she claims Roy Moore signed. However, Moore disputes this, basically saying that the signature was forged, pointing out a number of inconsistencies with the signature and saying that he never knew the woman in question. An allegation also came out saying that Moore had been banned from a local mall in Gadsden, Alabama for trolling the mall looking for young women. However, an official at the mall denies that Moore was ever banned from the mall. So what we have here at the moment is a person not giving a good defense against accusations that are currently on the level of nearly baseless allegations. Moore's campaign strategy seems to be to run out the clock to December 12th and win the election. Given that polls still show Moore with a roughly 3 to 10 point lead in the race, this strategy might work. At that point, it becomes an issue for the state of Alabama or the U.S. Senate. The most likely scenario at this point is that Moore wins the campaign on December 12th, then gets kicked out by the U.S. Senate. This is based solely on the statements that by numerous people in Congress and the GOP saying they think that he should quit the race. This is not based on whether these stories by these women are true or not. The national GOP party or the U.S. Senate cannot do anything at the state level, as it is already too late to remove Moore from the ballot, and that state is not inclined to interfere. So the haters basically have to wait until the election is done, and if Moore wins, then they can then have their shot at him. However, as an article in the Washington Post reports, this process is not easy. It would require an ethics panel investigation, which would take weeks, if not months. After that, a full chamber vote must agree by a 2/3 margin to remove Moore from the U.S. Senate, and that would be all 48 Democrats and 19 Republicans. The story will no doubt continue to develop, and we will follow it as it does so.